Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, September 26th, 2019, and today we're going to be taking a look at a 2020 presidential election prediction between Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is because the House of Representatives has taken very close steps in terms of impeaching President Trump. Now, the thing about that is President Trump is not going to be removed from office. Actually, let me just explain the overall impeachment process right now. To put something into reference, we go back with Richard Nixon with the Watergate scandal about pretty much about him breaking into the DNC to get information. But that took 15 months to get to a point where he eventually resigned to avoid House impeachment. But it still took around 15 months. They are starting this now. It's not going to end. It's probably going to end right before the 2020 election. And the way that it works is a simple majority in the House of Representatives can, quote unquote, impeach the president. That is possible. However, in order for the president to be removed from office, it moves on to the United States Senate, in which you need 67 out of the 100 votes in the Senate. And that is not going to happen. The Republican Party currently has 53 seats. The Democrats have 47. They would need 20 Republicans to cross over to vote to impeach President Trump. And it is not likely to happen. It has never happened once to any president in the United States. The closest was Johnson back in the 1800s, which was one vote away from impeaching him as president, but it has never, ever happened. But this is a scenario, let's say Trump's impeached, Mike Pence takes over in around August, Republican RNC time, 2020, goes up against the eventual nominee, which in this scenario would be Bernie Sanders. But this electoral map would actually turn out to be pretty interesting. Let's take a look at the, let's discuss, because we're not visually looking at anything, but let's discuss the characteristics between Mike Pence and Donald Trump. The reason why Mike Pence was added to this ticket back in 2016 was to offer a contrast of conservative values and someone who's a little bit more tempered than President Trump. Mike Pence being the governor of Indiana, who wasn't actually a too popular governor, which is something you might want to, show about his leadership skills, but that's a whole nother issue. Wasn't too popular amongst his own home state, but was still an influential Republican leader. His name was circulated. He actually endorsed Ted Cruz back in the 2016 primary, pretty much just like, oh, I voted for him, but not an actual full-on endorsement. But if we're looking at the way that Trump added him to the ticket, this was mainly because Mike Pence was the alternative if Donald Trump, this scenario ever happened, or just to give a more guiding hand in the office of the president, meaning that Mike Pence would counteract some of the more crazier things that could be said by President Trump. And when I say crazy, I don't mean it with a negative connotation, just something that we've really never seen before. And we've definitely seen a lot of that from President Trump. Whether good or bad, that's up for you to decide, but we definitely have seen a very stark contrast between the behavior of Vice President Mike Pence and President Trump. And the thing about President Trump is he is relatable. There is a reason why he won the 2016 election, and there is a reason why he still continues to hold on to the majority of his base. But Mike Pence, could you, to be completely honest, imagine Mike Pence on the same stage as President Trump and bringing in the same crowd? Mike Pence is boring, to put it plainly, and even though he is smart, he's more of a type of guy that can talk his way out of anything. So he'll do well in the debates. I mean, we looked at the 2016 debate with Mike Pence versus Tim Kaine, and he actually did pretty well, a lot better than President Trump, because President Trump goes on a lot of zinger things, pretty much focusing on, phrases that will hit the mainstream media. But Mike Pence is different. He's a more traditional type of politician, and that's not the type of Republican I can see winning in 2020. President Trump was the only Republican I can truly see winning back in 2016, and lucky for them, he was the Republican nominee. If we threw up someone like Carly Fiorina, Chris Christie, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, John Kasich, as much of those candidates were traditional Republicans, a lot of them were way too close to the liking of Mitt Romney to actually win the 2016 election against someone like Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump was the only relatable. I mean, this president uses Twitter the same way a teenager might. And even though that may seem like it's degrading the value of the office of the presidency, a lot of people also enjoy seeing a president taking part in something like posting internet memes or things like that. Mike Pence is not at all like that. Mike Pence is straight back to what we saw with Mitt Romney. straight back now, senator, actually, interesting, straight back to what we saw with people like McCain, very traditional in terms of Republican values and what he represents. And same thing in terms of drawing out crowds. We have never really seen an effect like Donald Trump on the Republican side. We saw it with Obama on the Democratic side in terms of bringing out crowd numbers. We're seeing it a little bit more with Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren now. But on the Republican side, Donald Trump was the only one who could do that. So let's go ahead and actually fill in some of these other Republican states. I do think Texas and Georgia, I do think that those ones are actually going to be a little bit better for Mike Pence than if Donald Trump was the actual nominee, purely based on the fact that these Republican states are traditional type Republican. These are not the ones that are full-fledged in support of President Trump. There's a reason why both of these got narrower back in 2016, even though the Rust Belt flipped, yet these two states got considerably narrower than the 2012 2012 presidential election. Texas went from over a 15% margin down to less than 10%. Iowa, a Democratic state from 2012, called around 11:15 p.m. Eastern Time in 2012, went for Donald Trump more than Texas. Just to put that on a comparison, Iowa went for Trump more than North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Texas, Arizona, Ohio even. And that was a pretty solid Democratic state back in 2008 and likely state back in 2012. But that's a whole other issue. That's a state-by-state thing. Let's go ahead and take a look at some states that Bernie Sanders could win. I do believe that he would win in North Carolina. That's not North Carolina, New Hampshire. What's interesting about this election, it brings me way back to the way that we looked at some of these other elections. The Maine 2nd District is definitely not going to go for Mike Pence. If we just look at the way that I'm going to be putting up this map, it's not going to be, oh, Donald Trump can convince these voters to go one way, or his appeal to the economic factor. Mike Pence has the traditional background, a political figure, governor of Indiana, a Republican state as the Republican nominee. Donald Trump was not in the military. He did not serve in any political office prior to being president. He was a businessman. And that's what a lot of people liked about him. The economy is something that is doing well in terms of approval for him. Everything else he is currently disapproved in. But again, quote unquote, it's the economy, stupid. But Mike Pence, what does he have to show for his term as governor? It's going to be very, very similar to what we saw with the governor of Massachusetts, Mitt Romney, back in 2012. If we're talking about Bernie Sanders' appeal, Bernie Sanders is very good at inspiring people to come out and vote, especially younger voters. We saw that back in 2016 in the Democratic caucuses. Actually, that's the only really time where Bernie Sanders shined. But the caucuses, which arguably could be seen as not as democratic as primaries, considering that it disenfranchises older voters. But that's a whole nother discussion for another day. But pretty much this electoral map is going to be based off of Bernie Sanders exciting people to come out and vote, especially in the Rust Belt, an area that Bernie Sanders, he doesn't exactly have the strongest hold on, but Mike Pence definitely doesn't have any stake in here either. He's exactly like those other Republicans that consistently lost here for 28 years in a row. Just saying, there's a lot of parallels to be drawn between this vice president, and I don't think that he would be a suitable nominee for the Republican Party in 2020. Bernie Sanders is going to win this election if it is eventually between Mike Pence and himself. These states are definitely going to flip back because they don't have anyone to turn to inspire them. Mike Pence is, simply put, boring. He is not... I mean, there's so much dirt on him as well with a past that could enrage Democratic voters to come out. The Democratic Party may be more inspired by Mike Pence than the Republican Party by Mike Pence, which is not a good sign. Same thing happened with Donald Trump back in 2018. A lot of Democrats came out against President Trump in the 2018 midterm, some Republicans, some independents as well. But at the same time, this is a presidential election. Your base is what matters, and Mike Pence is not going to be holding on to the same base as President Trump. We could see him winning in North Carolina. We could see him winning. I actually don't think he's going to win there either. But we go over to Nevada. That one would go to the Democratic Party. We talk about Ohio and Iowa. These two states, Bernie Sanders, the thing about him is he would have a little bit better of an appeal to the white working class. He definitely has a better appeal to rural voters as well. But the thing is, in terms of turnout, we have seen such a large majority for Donald Trump that even though Mike Pence might lose some of these states, he might lose some of the space. He could lose 8% of Donald Trump's base in Iowa and still win that election. Same thing in Ohio. which is why I think that these two states are going to be lean for the GOP. As for the remaining two states, I do think Florida could narrowly flip into the Bernie Sanders column. That's not too unrealistic considering, can you imagine Mike Pence trying to get big crowds in Orlando or even in Tallahassee or in some other maybe Republican parts of the state itself? Mike Pence is a traditional Republican, and traditional Republicans are not the type that are going to win these presidential elections with this precedent that has been set by Donald Trump. His quote-unquote recklessness, or for lack of a better word, I'm not really sure how you would describe President Trump. I guess very quick to say what he's thinking or tweet what he's thinking. That is something that has been grown to be liked by the Republican Party. We're probably not going to see a candidate like that in the future. Maybe we will, 10, 20 years. Maybe another Trump, Barron Trump, who knows, Donald Trump Jr., literally no one knows. But again, I don't think that Mike Pence is the same type of candidate or any same type of caliber as Donald Trump. Donald Trump is definitely in a league of his own and for his own benefit. So this electoral map ends up at 319 electoral votes for Bernie Sanders, 219 for Mike Pence. The states that flipped back for the Democratic Party: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Florida, Arizona, and Maine's 2nd Congressional District. When I said flip back, I did not mean to include Arizona, as it has not gone to a Democrat since, let me look at my map over there, 1996 with Bill Clinton. That was the last time Arizona went to a Democrat in a presidential election. But I guess you could say possibly flip back. So that wraps up this video. Make sure to go ahead and comment down suggestions, any topics that you guys want me to cover, any election nights, any themes, whatever. Literally comment it down below. I actually read the comments. But yeah, so thank you guys for watching this video, and I will see you all tomorrow.